I've written 3 novels. The first one was called Bibliolepsy. The second one is The Revolution, according to Raimundo Mata. And the third one just came out in December in the Philippines. It's called Gun Dealer's Daughter. And so those are the books that I've written and published. Yeah.
Are you working on anything?
Yeah, I'm working on something right now. I didn't expect to be working on something, but I ended up, a lot of the work that I've decided to do now has been, I do some reading first. My first novel, I just wrote it. I just wrote it, and then I gave it to someone, and then and then I went to grad school and all of that. But currently, I realized the problem with that, with just writing something. It took me 11 years to finish it. So I am writing right now. I started researching on this massacre in the Philippines by Americans in 1901. And I was interesting to me. It was in the island near the island I grew up. So, I just started reading about it and linking it to actually the Vietnam War. I thought that there was an interesting comparison because it's Southeast Asia. It was the Philippines was the earliest foray of America into its imperialist mode, one of the earliest anyway. And so I just thought there was some interesting connection.
So mostly just through reading?
Yeah, mostly through reading, but I end up really getting interested in how other, I get, it's mostly through reading.
What really inspired this interest in history? Because your second novel about the revolution is kind of a different aspect on it.
Yeah, it's very different. I don't know, actually, I think it's because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about my history. I once went to a lecture at Johns Hopkins. Someone said, okay, here's a guy who's going to be talking about this novel, this Filipino novel that sparked the revolution. And I went to this lecture, and that guy, he's a very famous scholar, Benedict Anderson. But it was surprising to me that I didn't know as much about my history as I thought I should. And the other thing is my husband, who was both a history, he's American, he was both a history and literature major. He wanted to get into the history. He was more interested in it, and he became very interested in it. And he became more knowledgeable about my history than I was. So that was really also embarrassing. And so I started reading up, and then I thought there was this very funny, to me anyway, a very funny memoir of the revolution by a revolutionary soldier about odd details like where they had to, just the odd details of being at war. They were very funny, weird details, They found they were so hungry that they found this rotten watermelon patch, and they started eating the watermelon, which was not good for being at war because they started having, tummy runs, so really stupid things like that. And I just thought, well, people don't tell these stories. My novel ended up not really being able to tell the stories that way. It was comic, but I ended up doing a lot of footnotes, so unfortunately it got buried. All that funny stuff is a little bit buried. So, I think the thing is that, this is what I think. I think everyone, in order to be just healthy, you need to have, as I tell my students, I teach them Freud, you have to have that perversion, a swerving into pleasure, and I think it's important for everyone to have that sense of pleasure, enjoyment, that might come from working. If it comes from working at school, and I definitely get pleasure from teaching, but there are other aspects of me that I think are healthy to really to enjoy. And I think for those teachers who understand that, I'm just enjoying something as they would enjoy biking, you know, or all these other things that you want. This ways in which I think a teacher is a multiple personality as everyone else is, and I think I hope that's what teachers also recognize about the work that I do. It's part of the multiplicity of all of us that I would have this other thing that I'm doing. I consider art just a way of being, alive. So it's like biking. One of the great things about writing is that if you can go into these residencies where you live in I was living in a castle a medieval castle in Italy, and I was writing about, I was doing research on the Native Americans actually, and trying to figure out the connection between the Native Americans and the Filipinos at the arrival of Magellan, because they were around the same time, and what's the effect, what is the history, what are the permeable spaces in the histories of seemingly very different countries. So I like the idea of coming to Deerfield and being in where the Native Americans, I always think that I'm walking along the street of the Native But I think it's just it's a beautiful place, for one. I think Deerfield is just gorgeous. It's a complex history, I think. It's a very interesting, Western Massachusetts is great because you have a very progressive, it's very progressive politically. At the same time, you have this conservation of history and land that's really beautiful. And it's I think every day at the Academy is beautiful, every moment, from the snow to the spring to the fall. It's just a gorgeous place. And if one could harness that sense of constant living with beauty in our kind of day-to-day interactions. It's hard though because you're working so much. Yeah.
Do you try to instill that in students, or I don't know, since you're a writer, do you look into students' writings more, or try to encourage them?
It's weird because I personally am not that interested in teaching creative writing, although I like teaching literature. But I teach writing. The last piece that my students did was a series of creative pieces, and I put them creating a little blog for them so that their stories can look, they're kind of, a blog publishes work, and at least it's very different when you write something on the computer and you see it in layout form, as you know, when you see scroll online versus just the article that someone submitted to you. It's a very different feeling for the writer. I read my text differently when it's on manuscript versus when it's in proofs versus when it's on a book. And of course I keep editing even when it's book form, but it really has a different feel when it looks like a book. So I just thought a blog allows you to publish their work, and so some of their work is on a blog, and it's kind of nice. So we'll see how that works out.
So, what would you, what piece of advice would you give to students who might think of becoming writers?
I think you should do it if you want to do it. I think if you do it because you want to be rich and famous, it's going to be problematic because it's not what it's about, So I think it's just, as I said, it's just a way of being able to engage richly with life. So if it's something that allows you to engage richly with others, with your life, with your sense of being in a world, giving significance to the world, it's not about being significant as in, oh, you're going to have this huge impact, but it's about finding meaning in the day-to-day. I think that's basically what writing, as I think it's again liking your labs, a scientist who likes his labs, or a dog lover who likes his labs, his Labradors. But it's the same thing that you just want. So my point with young writers would always be, do it if you want to do it. Listen to others. It's really important to listen to others, and then not listen to them, and keep your own counsel. listen to others, but recognize that you're still the boss. And the fact that you're the boss, and that's the great thing about being an author, you're the boss. You have complete authority over it. If that person doesn't like it, well, go to another person. There's always another reader, and you stick to your guns, but you recognize that you have readers, and you want your readers to hear you. That's really important. So it's both listening as well as seeing and hearing yourself.
You're trying to progress along, but you hit a writer's block. Has that ever happened to you, and how do you really get over that?
When I'm really writing a novel, I really write a novel only when I have the time to write the novel. So summers is when I write. And what I do is I just write. I just give myself, again, this is because I'm a novelist and not a poet. I don't know, poets might do things differently, although some poets sit down and spend 9 to 12. And that's what I do. I sit down and spend 9 o'clock in the morning to around 12. I go have lunch, and then I work again for 2 more hours until 2, and then I have to stop. No matter what happens, I just stop, because you can't. You have to have a life. You have to see your daughter, So I time myself, and I just sit there. I have my coffee. I do all these things, and so it's all about giving yourself time and making sure that you use it. And the thing is, you could be sitting there from 9 to 2, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
But that's fine, because you sat there. For me, it's the fact is, something always happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something, even if it's just a paragraph, and you have to be happy with that, because you have tomorrow. Tomorrow's always going to happen. That's what I think. That's the only way I can get through it. I mean, I did write. I wrote a novel every day from 9 to 2. I finished that second novel from 9 to 2 on my sabbatical, and it was just great. It was really the best time I had writing, because I decided that's what I'm going to do, and I think it's a good practice. That's what I do in the summer.